Welcome everyone. My name is Jessica Lapsiwala at Avixa. Over the next few weeks, we'll be talking to leading experts in the live events industry about their view on where the industry is going. We'll be asking the questions you're all thinking. How is the industry going to thrive and survive? What does the future really look like? And how can we collaborate together to ensure that this industry goes back to normal? Our guest today is Victoria Neeson, CEO of Dreamtek, a truly global company with offices in London, New York, Dubai, and Singapore. Dreamtek specializes in video production, in systems integration, and talent services. So, welcome, Victoria.
Hi, Jessica. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you too. Victoria, let's start off with a short intro into yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your role as CEO of Dreamtek?
So, as you say, I'm the CEO of Dreamtek. I've been with the company for 10 years and I'm based in New York. We are a global business. We have about 160 full-time employees and a huge network of freelancers and contractors that provide support to our business as well. And as you said, we're based in London, New York, Singapore, and Dubai. So my role is as CEO is obviously to drive the business forward. I manage the sales and marketing strategies, just basically run the show.
It sounds like quite a big operation that you've got there. So when the pandemic hit us all, how did your company really have to pivot and how did it impact your long-term plans?
So yes, it is a big operation, and that operation consists of a number of different work streams. And fortunately, we are actually quite prevalent in the whole world of digital events. And it's been quite a big part of Dreamtek's strategy over the past few years. And we have some really big clients that we work with already where we provide digital and virtual event support. So I guess we were in quite a fortunate position because we already understood the landscape. We already had the technology that we were using to deliver these digital event experiences. So I consider ourselves kind of quite lucky in still having to pivot and still having to sort of revise and redesign our strategy. But it wasn't, I guess it wasn't as big an impact as some other businesses, certainly businesses that only really operate within the live events industry.
It just came sooner than you thought, I guess.
It did. And I think, we wanted this digital events. We see the power and the sort of the success of that sort of digital event platform. So for us, it was kind of a little bit bittersweet, I guess.
So in terms of virtual events like webinars and panel discussions, obviously there has been a boom in this activity because that's the only way you can really engage with people at the moment. Do you think that it's a trend that's here to stay, or do you think that this is just merely a stopgap for the industry?
I fundamentally believe it is here to stay. And I feel that, what we're going to see over the next few months and possibly even years is people have become used to using these platforms now, right the way from sort of, the children right the way up to sort of the older generation. And I think it will become part of people's everyday life. I think there are some challenges around the technology and how we use the technology and how we integrate with it. But I fundamentally feel that it's here to stay.
And what do you think really makes for an engaging experience? Because there are so many, virtual experiences out there at the moment. So really cutting through the noise is quite important for companies at the moment. Where do you think that companies really can differentiate themselves in creating something engaging?
A lot about the events technology platform that we're using now, and there are definitely some challenges. But I think you're absolutely right. There are a huge proliferation of these tools and platforms out there. We've actually been doing a bit of research and breaking them down into categories. So, the categories like, immersive event platforms versus just conferencing platforms versus what gives you a really good virtual event experience versus what's easy to use. And, there are a few categories and a few platforms that we've been looking at, and we're kind of trying to be quite agnostic, because we feel that the event is going to dictate and drive the type of platform that is used. So we're kind of reversing it, and we want to be able to understand what the event is and figure out what the right platform is to use for that particular event.
That seems like a very sensible way to do it, because quite often people do forget to look at the objective, what's the end result that we want, and then work their way backwards. There's a temptation at the moment where people just go, wow, this platform's available, so let's do this.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the answer, because, as I said, every event is different. And the other big challenge is, moving from an IRL event, a real life event, to a digital event. It's a very, very different sort of animal. It's a very different kind of set of challenges that you have. And the technology platform is going to play a huge part in that. And I personally feel it's going to be very much about the experience. I think the content is going to be very important, but I also think it's going to be the experience that you get when you attend that virtual event. And I do not believe that there is one platform out there at the moment that can do everything. Okay. So there's going to be a race, I think, and we'll see who wins that race. But right now, I think the sensible route is to, as you said, is to look at the objectives of what you're trying to do with your event and then match the technology platform to it.
So if we fast forward slightly to post-lockdown, and when physical events start to come into play again, how do you think, what kind of physical events do you think would resonate with people in the future? Because people keep talking about a new normal and not the normal we used to know. So how does that apply to live in-person events?
I think what we're going to see is just smaller events and maybe more volume. And I think there's going to be restrictions on the number of people that can attend an event. I think we're going to see what I'm calling a hybrid event. I think we're going to see a lot of people that will do events with small numbers of people, but will still have a virtual audience. And I think that is probably what we're going to see for some time. And I think that there are definitely ways that we can make these experiences better. And that's going to be something that companies and businesses are going to be figuring out. And like I said, I think the experience is all very much part of that. But I don't see large gatherings and huge events and huge conferences happening for quite some time.
Yeah, I think that people perhaps won't be psychologically ready either. Even when the lockdown is finished and some of the measures and guidelines have been removed, there's going to be a huge psychological gap to get over as well.
I completely agree. Yep.
Okay, and what is the current sort of sentiment at the moment within the live events industry? What have you been hearing and sensing from people within our community?
You kind of broke up there,
Okay.
Jessica. I wondered if you could repeat the question.
Yeah, sure. What's the current sentiment within the live events industry? What are you hearing and feeling from within our community?
Well, I think obviously, people are very concerned, and, wondering what's going to happen, what the future holds, and that's totally understandable. But I also think we're seeing a lot of very innovative kind of ideas and suggestions coming out. And I think that the live events industry has actually quite quickly kind of pivoted and, are coming up with some really good suggestions and proposals and strategies on how to kind of work and operate within this new world. And I think that's really good. I think that's really cool. I'm seeing a lot of innovation and really quickly as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm seeing people reacting to it in a really positive way. So whilst on the one hand, you know, people are concerned, I also think we're actually going to see some really interesting and exciting ideas and concepts coming out of this situation.
And do you have any examples of any particular innovations that you've seen come out of the crisis?
Yeah, I mean, we're working with some customers who traditionally would hold live events. And, you know, we've been brainstorming with a lot of these brands. Some of them are really big brands. We've been brainstorming with them about how they can alter the experience and make it much more engaging and dynamic for the users. And it stems from, you know, having kind of virtual dinners and, you know, actually sort of sending people packages which they open at, you know, before the event takes place. They join the event, whatever they've opened in their package is part of the event. You know, and so they kind of ideas and concepts like that are coming up. And the other interesting thing to me is trying to replace that physical networking. You know, we go to an event because we want to network with people.
Mm.
And that's obviously quite difficult to do and challenging in a virtual environment. But I'm seeing lots of ideas and we're coming up with our own ideas about how you can actually still achieve that networking piece when you're attending a virtual event. And that, again, is partly due to the technology platform that you're using, but also just, you know, kind of doing that research with other people that are attending, matching people with the right people, and allowing them then to go into a virtual breakout room and do that networking that they would otherwise do at a physical event or a live event. So I think there's some exciting stuff happening, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it takes us.
You mentioned earlier brainstorming, and it's something that's happening a lot at the moment. And we've seen a lot of new collaborations come together as well as a result of the crisis, people really coming together to exchange ideas. Are there any partners that you wouldn't have previously worked with, but now are working with or talking with to come up with new ideas, or just to kind of exchange knowledge of what's happening in the live events industry?
Absolutely. We are absolutely developing new partnerships from, you know, throughout this crisis. And, you know, in Dreamtek we're a production business. We're a video production company. We have a huge presence at some of these large technical companies where we do actually run live events. And, you know, the partnerships that we're developing are very kind of, we're building partnerships with very creative and experiential businesses, because that's not typically a skill and a service that we have provided in the past. But in this virtual events world, the experience and the content is going to be a very, very important part of any kind of service that we provide. And so the partnerships that we're building and really successfully building are around the content and the experiential kind of world. That's the gap that we have, and that's what we're filling by using partners.
So do you think that there's a move for production companies and pro AV live events companies to move more into the direction of becoming co-creators and designers of experiences, rather than just providing technical equipment?
I think they're going to have to. I don't think that there is going to be a choice, because it's not just about technology and the equipment. You know, there's a completely new set of rules now developing around you know, digital events, and you know, the experience is going to play a really important part in that. So I would be very surprised if these two worlds don't come together. And you know, it's the first thing that we realized as a production company, that we would need that expertise, we would need that experiential expertise, and that's why we have, you know, we've formulated the partnerships.
And with so many new technology tools being used, which are the ones that are going to become increasingly important and, in your view, stand the test of time once the pandemic has eased down?
I think that's a really good question, and maybe a bit controversial. But I think what we're seeing with some of the newer type platforms is I think they're definitely having issue with scale and reliability. We've seen some, these platforms have just hugely, massively increased in use, and that has had an impact on performance. I think with some of the older kind of legacy type platforms, which aren't cloud based, I think we're seeing performance issues there, and not only performance issues, but the ability to actually fulfill what is needed, and being able to very quickly adapt to this new world that we're living in. So I feel that I think what's going to happen is some of these kind of existing conferencing platforms or event platforms are going to very, very quickly have to develop new technology to adapt to this, because I don't think people will want to use multiple platforms. I think if there is going to be one platform that can do what we need it to do, I think that's going to be the way to go. And that's why I think we're going to see a lot of activity and that race I was talking about, the race to develop the best platform that becomes ubiquitous and everybody wants to use.
Brilliant. And just one final question, and then a few final words from you. So the last question is really, during this time of lockdown, a lot of people have done things that they wouldn't have normally done, both from a creative perspective or just testing new practical ideas. What have you been doing or experimenting personally? And can you share some of the things that the Dreamtek team have been doing?
I didn't actually, I knew I had some talented people in my team, but I didn't actually know how creative some of these people were. And every week we have a kind of like a social event, which is on a Friday. It's the end of the week. Everybody's had a crazy week. So the whole Dreamtek team comes together virtually, and we've been giving a theme to each week. So one week we had a bartender come in, and he did a virtual cocktail making experience for the team. And that was really, really fun and really awesome, and everybody loved it. And then the other week we had a personal trainer who came in and did a personal training session with us, a virtual training session with us, which was great. And we've been coming up with ideas every week to sort of just bring the team together. It's what Dreamtek's all about. We're a very social business and a family oriented business. And this has really gone down well with the team, and everybody's really enjoyed being able to see each other once a week, but also having something different and a theme. So that's something that I would never have normally done. And we've very, very successfully implemented this weekly social event. But also, just seeing how robust the team are and how committed they are, and the fact that we're all coming together, and some of them are coming up with some really creative, awesome ideas. So I've just been blown away by that, and I see it. Yeah. I've seen it as a huge opportunity for people to step up. So yeah, I guess that's one thing that we're doing that we would never have done prior to this.
It's amazing the new bonds that are created, and how much you get to know your team a lot better, and how quickly humans adapt to different situations.
Absolutely. And and obviously, it's important that you do these sorts of things. It's important that you continue to connect with your employees, and everybody is feeling vulnerable and worried and concerned. So from our perspective, it's super, super important that you stay connected and you give the teams the support that they need. But this has been one way of doing that. And it's been really, really helpful.
Brilliant. And finally, a few words from you, Victoria. Any final tips or advice that you would give for the live events industry? How do we keep going? How do we make sure our industry continues to thrive and survive?
Yes, I mean, I think my advice would be that this is not going to be a quick situation that we're going to come through and come out of. I think we have to continue to innovate. We have to continue to adapt, and we have to come together. And I think, you raised a really good point about partnerships. We need to, remove that kind of competitiveness that we've seen and we see in the live events world. And we do need to come together and collaborate and innovate, because, the virtual events world is where we need to be. And that's what our customers and the communities are going to be relying and depending on. And so, I think, continue to innovate and stick together.
Brilliant. Some great final words there from Victoria. Victoria Neeson, thank you very much for joining Avixa's discussion today, and best wishes for the future.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.